Hey everyone, I know we are a bit early, but I think it's time for my Blaster of the Year video. I'm your host Dave, welcome to Tag. My Blaster of the Year. It's not going to be the same for everyone, this is just my opinion, and I tend to pull myself away from the Flywheeler Blaster. So here, what you're going to see is mostly Springer. I am going to mention some other blaster, but the blaster that retained my attention during the year are obviously the one I play with the most. So we're going to go back brand by brand like I do usually and check the good and weaker point they had during the year. Let's start with Dart Zone. Well, Dart Zone. Dart Zone really concentrated themselves on the half dart blaster since last year. We know the release were okay, and this year was basically the same. The release were pretty much all hit and miss. Hear me right here, I really love Dart Zone and they went right up my list when they released the Nexus Pro back a few years. But nowadays, during the year, they released the Omnia Pro, they released the MK4, which both of them had their flaw. Basically, the Omnia Pro was defective out of the box. That's kind of an issue. I'm not even sure if people are already getting their hands on the new version. And the MK4 was basically a Swift clone with not as tight of a performance. I know the blaster was very smooth, very high quality as the Dart Zone Pro lineup is, but this blaster left a lot of people and myself on my appetite to have tried it once. It is nothing more than the average Springer. And then they released like a cheaper version of a pistol blaster. They released like a corrected Deuce Pro, the Outlaw, the Dart Zone Max Outlaw. And even this blaster was far from being perfect. I mean, it had a good grip, it had a good feeling. You can prime it one-handed, but this prime is awful with the fake hammer on it. This was not what I was expecting from a hammer prime revolver. Nonetheless, this thing is quite accurate and have good performance for the quite compact form factor they gave it. In the end, I don't really have any big mention for Dart Zone this year, besides the fact that the price of the blaster kind of went up and the quality kind of went down. So I left them out of this Blaster of the Year race. Now I'm going to continue on with Nerf, because here I feel like Nerf was out of desperation this year. Most of the blaster we saw were either reskin, reshell, nothing really new, and the reshell, some of them were very, very expensive, the Nerf limited version, plus they keep making the same blaster over and over again. A couple good things, they continued on with the rival, and they had some, solid offering. The Forerunner was still very good, and the Pilot was an amazing blaster. But still, it leaves everybody on their appetite, meaning their blaster, 50, 60, sometimes 70 FPS, it is not cutting it, and they lack the accuracy, they lack the improvement, the innovation. Which bring us to the same thing they always do, the Strife X. Their first real attempt at a half-dart blaster. There's quite a few problems here, like the dart they use, the cut-down AccuStrike dart, very good for Flywheeler but useless for Springer blaster. But I have to say, this blaster, I had it in my hand, I played with it once or twice, this thing is nice. It feels super sturdy, it is super responsive, got a nice configuration, but it is, again, more of the same. It is what Nerf do. They reskin, they reshell, and they resell at premium price. What they did with this blaster, yes, they include a superb battery, but it's just a LiPo, a safe LiPo that they install into the blaster. It is responsive. If you never own the Strife, if you don't have a good Flywheeler, this might be a good option for you. But if you're already equipped, you can easily pass it on. I don't know, maybe if Nerf would have announced 2-3 blasters, maybe a Stampede X, a Strife X, and maybe a Retaliator X, that would have been 3 different types, it would have appealed a lot more person, but like that, it leaves me cold. So, no, again, Nerf is not cutting it. Maybe next year, maybe they will catch on, but not for this year. Early in the year, many months after they teased three crazy blasters, the Outcry, the Gamma, and the Lawless, the company Game Face finally released the Game Face Tryon. I mean, out of the box, this Game Face Tryon had everything for it. It was a pump action Springer with Slamfire, with Talon compatibility. This thing had everything. Unfortunately, down the road, this blaster, even with the sturdy construction and the slim profile, had some firing issue. For some mysterious reason, it was basically based on the design they made for the internal. Sometime when you press the trigger, it just didn't fire. Cancelling the safety on the blaster will help a bit, but it still does not resolve the problem. Maybe some printing of internal or adding a part or two inside the blaster, maybe cancelling the slam fire, but the slam fire is really a strong point on this blaster. It even have a skinny pusher, so you don't have to prime the blaster before you change the magazine. And like I said, this skinny pusher is very, very useful on the field to quickly change your magazine. And that thing generally works flawlessly and is quite easy to upgrade. You can easily upgrade the barrel. And under the stock, you got a little quick access for the spring that allow you to install spacer on it to vary your FPS from 130 to 200 FPS. I mean, this thing is pretty cool. For that 80 United States dollar, 110 Canadian dollar, this was really something. If it was not from the firing issue, which is very hard to correct, this thing would have been my blaster of the year. I mean, this thing performs, and I even take it as a spare with me sometimes. It always helps if something happened to your blaster or to play lower FPS game. Another little company, when I say company I should say branding, appeared in the end of last year but really came on the market at the beginning of this year, which was XYL. XYL is a small branding which basically relicense blaster or sometimes make an original one. The few blasters they had include UDL, like basically a pimped out UDL shotgun, and a small shell ejector revolver. But then they arrived with something pretty crazy, which was the KM9 Unicorn. This thing had everything. Aluminum barrel, strong internal even if they were plastic, a metal tube inside. Some of them were different than others because some of them had a ported tube, others had a full tube. But generally, the construction of this blaster was pretty sturdy and it offered loads of configuration options because of the included part. You could put it top prime, pump action, you could remove the stock, have an in-strike attachment point on the bottom of the handle. You could even attach a 2-liter bottle or a water bottle on it to have some kind of a paintball bottle stock on it if you are, let's say, more used to it. This Unicorn had a lot of strong points. I mean, okay, this barrel, I extended it. I put a longer barrel inside, but those barrels are only friction fit. You could just pull on it, reinstall a new one. This helped. Plus, there is a quick dismantle which really separates your blaster in half so you can quickly swap the spring. The adjustable integrated stock which you could remove if you don't want it and prefer a CQB version. It not only is compatible with Talon mag, this mag is basically a Talon magazine. I found it very, very useful to have extra Talon mag coming with blaster, and those are long one and good one. I really love those magazines. This thing is quite affordable, around 100 United States dollar, and you got a lot of features for that price. But my main gripe here with this blaster is originally when we were ordering it, there was no way of knowing if we had a full tube, a ported tube, a longer barrel, shorter barrel, updated version, non-updated version, early one, late one. That was kind of a concern for me because we couldn't know what we were going to receive and we had to guess. I mean, out of 3 that I received, 2 were ported tube and the third one was a full tube. This one is upgraded. It's my personal one, around 150 FPS. Nothing crazy. The long barrel is mostly for accuracy, but this thing got potential. But unfortunately, because of the model problem with this thing, I can't put it blaster of the year. But again, very, very close. This thing is awesome. then of course I would have to speak about ZWQ. ZenWiki kinda had a weird year. I mean, it started on a weird note, a very, very good note, and quite of a faux pas they made at the beginning of the year, but they corrected that thing. Let's start with their little mishap, the S100S Base Blaster. I understand this Base Blaster was basically a 2022 blaster. It is not a 2023, but by the time it came to Canada and the United States, this thing was a 2023 blaster. And oh my god, this was not what I expected. This was a premium price blaster, like around $180 United States dollar for this blaster. And when you look at it, it looked like it's worth it. My problem was there was some design flaw in there, like the barrel. There was no dart gate, and the barrel was holding by a screw gouging into it. The all plastic internal, besides this little priming member, the crooked plunger that I received on this thing, the lack of marking, this muzzle, which you need to dismantle the whole blaster if you want to remove it, and the spring. If you want to swap the spring on this performance blaster, you would have to completely open the rear of your blaster, split the shell. That is kind of a hassle. Plus there was this handle which I had to shave. There was like no cover. This is hollow, and this was kind of sharp on the corner. I mean, there was a ton of issue. The mag release was not working like optimally to release it with the included part. This was feeling like a prototype. Fortunately, ZWQ were quite quick on the response on this thing and went back to the drawing board, redesigning the blaster. I mean, basically, it's like they took my video, corrected every issue I had with it, and we ended up with the updated Base Blaster version 2.5. This Base Blaster, in short. This is night and day with the other one. The muzzle, which could be just removed, just friction fit removed by pulling it. This is just one big point. All the internal are CNC aluminum in this thing. Basically, the only plastic part is the shell, magazine, and grip on this thing. Even the rail are now aluminum. I mean, I mentioned that when I was like kind of disappointed. The rail were plastic on the original one, and when this one came, it was all metal. Plus, they added a rear spring access on it so we could remove it, and they added a dart gate into the blaster, making it a true performance blaster because you can just unscrew this barrel like a worker Harrier, and all the worker Harrier barrel will fit this blaster, and you could have already option on the market for it. The only maybe down point with this thing is the proprietary mag, and then there would be the price, because this thing would be well over 200 United States dollar in the shape it is right now. Buying this version is expensive, but believe me, this is really like kind of a niche blaster, but really, really something else. The quality is there now. While ZWQ were redesigning the Base Blaster, they were already at work redesigning one of the best blasters they released last year, which is the S200S Viper. This new Viper received pretty much every cosmetic appearance of the CNC version, and at the beginning of this year, the CNC version became more available. I know it was available last year, at the end of the last year, but again, it was so long to come. This was a 2023 blaster for me, and it was basically my best surprise. I mean, you can't really do any better than this thing. Without taking into consideration my custom swing barrel, I mean, this whole blaster kit, it is on another level. This Viper became a whole other beast. This particular blaster is around 180 FPS. Yeah, it is 180 FPS with a one finger prime, slide lock, very nice return, smooth action, and an amazing seal. This blaster is basically flawless. The machining is amazing. The parts work well together. It was working right from the start. Basically, it was a home run. My only little hiccups would be the color. This thing is way too realistic, and since they only offer two versions, a silver one and this black one, either version is too realistic. And of course, the price. If you put the price of the blaster into consideration plus the magazine, and if you even had the price of extra magazine with all the internals out of metal and maybe a custom barrel, you will end up with a 300 and maybe 350 United States dollar blaster, 400 plus Canadian. That's the main point here. This is a niche blaster. That's why, even with all my good experience, this is the blaster I used the most this year. I can't even give it Blaster of the Year. If the price wasn't an object, if that thing was maybe a different color or offered at more place, easier to buy, maybe I would have think about it. But nonetheless, this thing just fell short because of the price and the look of being my Blaster of the Year. This is basically the best thing I ever fired in a Nerf game. Having spoken about ZWQ, I can't pass Worker. As I was saying, the Worker barrel were working into the ZWQ blaster, and there's a good reason for that. Was their first blaster of this year, which was the Harrier. The Harrier was basically the brother, the successor to the Prophecy, but in a, let's say, a unified look, going with the Phoenix 2.0 and the Nightingale. They came with that nice crisp aesthetic with metal part to give us what is basically one of the best blaster out there. This Harrier is pretty much awesome. There is nothing really to remove from it. Premium material. I mean, this shell is really thick, really solid. Everything is super smooth on it. Right out of the box, you got two different barrels, two different springs to adjust your FPS. Yes, this whole package come to a price. It is still like $180, but it is $180 worth of blaster. You got a buffer tube stock, which is pretty much standard. You got basically only one tool you need is this Allen key to take the whole blaster apart and to maintain it. This thing have a lot of feature on it, plus a lot of options already available from Worker to upgrade it even more. Longer barrel, stiffer spring. Which bring me to my issue with this blaster. At the price they put that thing, 180 United States dollar, I am to expect a flawless blaster. Completely flawless. Meaning the included spring will work on it, which it didn't. When you were using too stiff of a spring, the 1.6 or maybe just the smaller, I think it's 1.4, the smaller 1.4 at 30 centimeters, this thing sometimes did not catch. It was basically the plunger design which was not good, which would force you to upgrade it again and go with third party, which basically is Saber, which make a lot of part for this blaster to make it even better, more solid, more reliable. Meaning even at this premium price with all this big quality, this is not perfection. It is close but not perfection, and quite expensive to be imperfect. Then for Worker, a few months pass, they released Dart, they released a few stuff, and they announced a copy and paste of the Harrier in a smaller volume. Basically, they saw that the Unicorn was a super popular blaster, and they announced the Seagull, which in the original announcement had Slamfire, and when we got it in our hand, didn't have Slamfire. My only problem with this Seagull, yeah, it's a little less expensive than the Harrier. It's about 130 United States dollar, but it's just a little smaller, maybe a little smoother because it is shorter. I don't know, but this thing feels good in hand. But it's basically a copy and paste of the Harrier in a smaller format, which is nothing innovative. I would have hoped for them to bring maybe a Springer pistol blaster or an AEG blaster. I mean, Worker can do it, they have the mean for it, but they didn't. And with those price, that's why none of those two blasters will go for Blaster of the Year. Now, let's talk a bit about X-Shot, because X-Shot basically Zuru had a crazy year. They reinvented themselves, they continued on with the skins line, and they even entered the flywheel market. But that is not what retained my attention here. The blaster that impressed me the most this year for Zuru is the X-Shot Skins Pro Series Longshot. This X-Shot Pro Series Longshot. Basically, this blaster comes with everything. Full length dart, half length dart, pump action, bull pump Springer blaster with both magazine. Even have somewhat of a scar barrel on it. And this thing got slam fire. Above all, the performance, 140 FPS, are really the performance of this blaster. It will fetch even above really easily. And it is quite moddable. And this moddability is also a little flaw on this blaster. The plunger tube on the stock Longshot is clear polycarbonate and quite thin. So it got a tendency to crack, meaning you're gonna have to eventually swap this for a metal one. But this metal tube is not only for the plunger tube. Adding this metal part will give a lot of rigidity to a blaster that got a little tin of plastic but is working super smoothly. This thing is literally packed with feature. Even this little mag adapter, which is kind of magical, it got a little notch here. And when you use this mag adapter for half dart, you got a second mag release for your half dart only. I mean, this thing is well thought of. Of course, it is inspired by Orion's work, but I mean, they really did it. And all this package come at $29.99 United States dollar, 50 Canadian dollar. This is a price that just can't be beat. I don't even know how Zuru did it. Let's say this thing is the second blaster I played the most this year after my Viper. It really eclipsed even my Harrier. I had more fun with this thing. The profile, the air goes on it. It's very short, so you can really go around corner. And even with this short size, there is still a 40 centimeter barrel or really close inside, which is amazing for a blaster of this size. But this is a skins blaster, meaning you got a superb deco on it. The prime action is super smooth. You got slam fire, good performance, a metal barrel, good upgradability. Yes, you will need to add your little tube, but pretty much every blaster on this list needed a mod at some point to live a long life. This one is no different, but at the price it is offered, you can easily buy 2 or 3 of this blaster before you buy any other one on this list. So it's without hesitation that I say in 2023, my blaster of the year is the X-Shot Skins Pro Series Longshot. So whether you are a newcomer or an avid modder, you need one of those in your arsenal. You can't really go past the X-Shot Skins Pro Series Longshot. That's why it is my blaster of the year. That's it for this small video. X-Shot Skins Pro Series Longshot, blaster of the year. In the meantime, you can always follow me on Facebook and Instagram at @thatoldnerfguy. Please leave a like and comment, subscribe for more content. Don't forget to hit that bell to notify for my latest video. This was Dave Patag. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.